Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of PlayStation Pursuit. So in this episode, I don't really have anything mind-boggling that I got for the PlayStation, but I kept trucking along, got some good additions to the collection, a lot of commons, and then a couple other cool surprises and different things too. So stick around and I'll show you what I got. Okay, so for this episode, I actually drove around Syracuse to some of the pawn and thrift stores of the area, just to kind of see. I haven't been there in a while because I haven't really been looking for games, and I thought, hey, let's see what they have. And my first stop was at one of the pawn stores near my house, actually, and this isn't a game, but I figured I'd pick it up just to go for the PlayStation collection, and it's actually version 2.4 of one of the PlayStation Underground discs, or demo discs, and it's got a little, booklet on the inside of the packaging, and then a broken disc case, so it's really hard to hold the disc in, but two discs there, so a lot of fun demo stuff to check out. Some of the demos are like Tomb Raider 3, Bug's Life, Bomberman World, Brave Fencer Musashi, so probably like a 1998-99 era demo there. Pretty cool to find that at a pawn store, and like I said, even though it's not a game, it's not going towards the collection, I still thought that was pretty cool to have. So but that kind of kickstarted the weekend of when I went game hunting, and I got a good amount of games for 99 cents a piece at thrift stores. They're mostly sports games. They're usually the kinds that if I was looking for better game deals out in the wild and I saw these, I'd be like, that's all they have, but it works out in my favor now because I'm looking for the good, the bad, the ugly, all in between, etc. for a PlayStation. So it's good to get these out of the way for 99 cents a piece. So first one is NFL Game Day 99. I'm not sure how many of those I have to get to complete the collection, but got that. And then NASCAR 2000. NASCAR 99. You see there's a NASCAR theme, because then I also have NASCAR Racing, which says 96 season, so this is an earlier one. I didn't know what it was when I first saw it, but then I saw 96 at the bottom, and it's actually, usually these are like by Electronic Arts or something like that, do those racing games, and this one's actually a Sierra published game, so I thought that was kind of cool. Sierra does a lot of PC games and stuff, especially back in the day. But back to EA Sports, F1 2000. So again, these are nothing to write home about, but still pretty cool to get them. Keeping with the racing theme, and I got a bunch of stickers I gotta clean off this one. Ford Racing. And I saw there was a Ford Racing 3 or something on PS2 at the thrift store as well, so apparently that franchise continued. Cool Borders 3. This one's Extreme Sport. First one that's not a regular sports game. And then can't get common sports games without throwing a Madden title in there. This is Madden 2001. And then my dad used to like these types of games for whatever system they were on, and then it's Cabela's Big Game Hunter. This one is Ultimate Challenge. There's probably multiple of those as well on the system. And then the last game that I found at a pawn store was actually a pretty good deal. I think it was under the value of what this game actually is, and it's just a weird, uncommon game, so really glad to have this in the collection. And it is Swagman. And from the video footage I've seen, because I've been watching videos of this game growing up and everything, I knew of this game, just never played it. And it's, I think, like kind of a top-down Zelda-style game. I don't know if it's got dungeons per se, or if it's just one open world, or if it's level-based. Like I said, I haven't played it, but from the videos, the gameplay seems very similar to a Zelda. And I don't know if this is the villain, it's got this guy on the cover, but you actually play as like this kid with like kind of wacky hair. It's very 90s looking in the art style. I mean, you got these weird, almost Tim Burton-esque looking character designs. They're just so dark and weird. But very glad to get that. We'll be happy to check that out. And that was in great shape. So always good to find a game like that in the wild. It's just kind of uncommon and unique to add to the collection. So why don't we take a look at 3 of my favorite games this week. Stay tuned. Okay, so I want to start by talking about a PlayStation game that is in a series that has kind of fallen from grace. This title kicked it off and made it a memorable title for many gamers in the late 90s, and it continued for a long time. And I believe the series is still going. It just doesn't have the same strength, especially against Call of Duty, which is the current most popular first-person franchise. I mean, I know Battlefield and Halo are still pretty popular as well, but Call of Duty was just a monster when Modern Warfare revolutionized, going from World War II to modern era. But before that, World War II shooters were the thing that just, the more it felt like you were there, the better. And this game that I'm going to show really kind of started why the World War II genre stayed for so long, I believe. And that game is Medal of Honor. So, like I said, franchise that's been around for a while. But when this came out, you had war shooters and everything like that, and they were just kind of generic and everything. And then this game comes along. And this came out after, like, GoldenEye and some of the other more popular home console first-person shooters. But what this one did so well is just create an atmosphere. I mean, you have PlayStation graphics here. It's not too much of a looker, especially nowadays, but at the time it was, competent with the rest of the games on the system. But it used the CD audio and AI patterns that hadn't been seen before in games in such a way that you really felt like you were in World War II. And what I love about early Medal of Honors especially is how they really did feel like almost like a World War II documentary, and then you got to play these battles that took place. Call of Duty did that too before it became more of a Modern Warfare title, but it just... I really like that they really treated it with respect, almost, like this, because this is the Great War, and I really felt when I played this that, like, the music and the sounds, it's like stuff we take for granted now. You play games and they have these bombastic soundtracks, and the sound design is fantastic. Your bullets whizzing by your head and stuff. But when this game came out, shooters didn't really have. I mean, they might have had rockin' soundtracks like Doom and stuff, but the sound effects and music didn't come together in a way that made you feel like you were really in a war. When this game came out, though, I remember one mission, you're going down the train tracks at night, and you hear explosions in the distance, and it was like scary almost the first time I played this, because you hear that in the distance, and it made you think, like, this is what soldiers actually hear when they're in a battle, and they hear this stuff on the horizon, and they don't know when an enemy might jump out of the bushes or something, and it just did that so well. But on top of that, I mentioned earlier the AI was really good, and it's because they did things, especially for the time, that we take for granted now. I remember the first time I threw a grenade, and an enemy, like, ran over to it and tried to kick it back at me. I mean, that just was such a cool moment, and you didn't see that in any other shooter at the time. So it was cool that it was a very respectful World War II piece, but also had some really cool gameplay innovations like that. And another interesting thing about this game is it had dual analog control schemes before that became the norm. It really was Halo that kind of made that the norm. There was other games that had it, this one, and there's an Alien game for the PS1, Alien Resurrection. And that actually is a funny review if you can find it online. There was a review from back then that was like, and getting used to the dual analog control setup is ridiculous, and that's now the norm. So it's funny that it was just too new, I guess, for the reviewer. But this game had it as well. And I don't think it was like it's perfected because it was so far back then, but it was pretty cool that they did that. But even playing it with the old school console controls, I never had a problem with it because you can set the strafing left and right to the L1 and R1 buttons, so it was still pretty easy to use the D-pad to move and turn, but then also keep sidestepping, because as anybody who plays shooters know, you have to sidestep, whether it's console shooters like this, PC shooters, that's one of the big tactics, especially the more action-focused ones. And in this, because it was a little more realistic, you didn't need to do it too much, but it still gave you the control to do that. So again, this is not something that's not really well known. They made a sequel to this where you play as a female. I've actually never played other than a few minutes. I think I rented it once, and it was okay, but I was kind of like out of the mood of it. But now I can't wait to go back and pick that one up. But this game is awesome, and I feel like it's long forgotten because the series has kind of taken a nosedive. So if you've never played the first one and you could appreciate the game for what it delivered on back in the day, I think you can enjoy it. So check it out. Okay, so the next game that I want to talk about is the second in this series on the PlayStation, but it's from a series that started on the Sega Genesis and had, Game Boy and Game Gear ports and Sega CD and 3DO. I'll briefly show the one I'm not going to talk about, and that is, just to show the series, Road Rash. This was one of my favorite franchises on the Genesis. Great mix of racing, but really it was all about the combat and, interaction with the traffic and animals and pedestrians and other racers on the road. It was a really cool game. And this one is really fun. It's a port of the 3DO one, and I really like it. I really like the soundtrack in this one, although it doesn't play the licensed songs during the races like it does in the Sega CD version, so I wish it did that, but still, it's a really fun game. But they took that game and made a sequel in full 3D. That game, the first Road Rash, was sprite-based characters and bikes and everything, and even the cars and stuff. This one was fully polygonal all the way. So, first thing right off the bat I'm going to say is I don't enjoy the gameplay in this quite as much as the old school style or even the one before this, but I wanted to talk about this one because it has some really cool innovations that are kind of, again, like I mentioned when I was talking about Medal of Honor, things that we take for granted today. So, once again, the fully 3D polygonal graphics were pretty impressive for the time that it was fully 3D. One of the downsides was that when you fell off your bike, it just quickly flashed you back to your bike. There was no off-bike action, because in Road Rash, when you fall off your bike, you have to run back to your bike, and that's kind of part of the thing. It's like, come on. And I always like to mess with that and actually explore when I did that, so they took that out of this, and that was kind of annoying. But it still was a pretty good first attempt at doing the series in 3D. Now, the big innovation, the reason I wanted to talk about this is every track in this is part of one world map. It's kind of like something you'd see in, if anybody's ever played the Burnout Revenge, I believe it is. It might be the one, Burnout Paradise for Xbox 360 and PS3. That Burnout gave you a whole city and town, maybe it was an island, I can't remember, to work with, and the tracks were kind of set up parts of this open world map. This is actually how this game is set up, and I thought it was really cool because the different tracks are different roads on this map, and you can still see other parts that aren't part of your current race as you're driving by them, and so you start to get used to the world. And it had this kind of, that's what I like about it, it had this good world building for a racing game. You kind of felt like you got to know the racetracks and everything, and I think that was really cool. Now, delving further into why I like that point of the game, one thing that was really cool is if you're going, let's say, down a hill, you're really up high on the hill, and you're going down a hill, and you see the road stretch up in front of you, and then you see the background shows it's part of the background, so it's like maybe like two-dimensional backdrop with some polygonal buildings and stuff in front of it, way off in the distance in lower detail. What they were, even in the low detail, they were low version or low quality version representations of actual track stuff. So, to save hardware processing power and stuff, they didn't have it highly detailed in the distance. But I just absolutely loved that you could see actual things. It wasn't just a static background that was behind everything, or which a lot of games at the time did. There was like, the draw distance, and then behind that was a solid background or a skybox or something, and that works very well. But this game I thought was really innovative for that purpose, because you could see way off in the distance, and it just kind of made the world, even in its PlayStation 1 graphics, feel more realistic and feel more impressive in my mind. And I loved that. I just loved seeing things in the horizon and then getting to them. And we get that's the thing that we do all the time in games. You can see it. It's probably mostly detailed, except for the fine details from far away. But at this time, it was so unlike anything else I'd ever played. So, like I said, not my favorite Road Rash on the PlayStation, and there's actually one after this that I haven't played, Jailbreak, so I'll be adding that to the collection and give my thoughts on that. But I think this one deserves a little mention because of what it tried to do, bringing it to 3D. I think it did accomplish some very good things. Soundtrack's not as good as the one, in my opinion, before this, but still a really cool game, and I wish this franchise would come back because it was so fun back in the day. One franchise that was a huge, impactful game to me growing up was Earthworm Jim. I loved the series, I loved the character, I loved all the stuff that spin-off comics and toys and TV show, but the game was really what I loved. I loved the first one. Second one I liked a lot too, and I had the Sega CD version of the first one and the Saturn version of Earthworm Jim 2. I love those games to death. I love the soundtrack by Tommy Tallarico. I loved the artwork by Doug TenNapel, who designed the character and everything. And it just came out at such a unique time where, you know, it was unlike anything else I ever played, and a great sense of humor as well. Now, there was Earthworm Jim 3D on the Nintendo 64, and I played it and didn't really like it, even though I had some funny moments. The gameplay was just compared to the 2D versions. And, you know, it's a franchise that I'd love to see come back. I'd love to see another side-scrolling one with really detailed animation, which is one of the things that it was well known for. But for the PS1, there was one game made by the same creators of Earthworm Jim that kind of gave me some of the same vibes, and I love this game. And I always try to recommend it. So that game is called Wild 9, and it's the special feature in this game that makes it unique, and even says at the front actually, is torture your enemies. So in most side-scrolling games, because, you know, when this came out, side-scrollers had kind of overstayed their welcome, and Sony especially was like, we want to do 3D games, and even though this is three-dimensional graphics, it was still on a side-scrolling plane. Now, going back to the torturing element, most games that were of that old-school platforming thing had either you shooting the enemies, or jumping on their heads, or hitting them with a melee attack of sorts, or a weapon attack. What was cool about this one is you had this thing, I believe it's called the rig, and it's like your arm has like a metal apparatus on it, and a metal hand, and it releases this beam that kind of like captures it. It grabs it, holds onto them. And then you can do various things from there. You can flip them over your head back and forth and kind of bash them on the ground multiple times to hurt them that way. Or you can move them and walk with them hovered in your hand for limited time to move them into things in the environment to kill them. So there was like a lot of funny things. Like, there would be like grinders and stuff, and you throw the alien enemies down, they're like, "Bah!" and they get mangled. And it's got a similar twisted sense of humor as Earthworm Jim. But that was kind of the thing that made it stand apart. And it's pretty difficult. It actually has some really challenging levels in it, but it reminds me a lot of Earthworm Jim. And there's even homages. There's a song that was from Earthworm Jim that's used in this soundtrack. It's actually note for note, I believe, the exact same song from the Sega CD version of Earthworm Jim 1. So Tommy Tallarico did the soundtrack in this again, and he reused his song for this one. But there's also little things like there's like a free-falling level that feels like some of the free-falling levels from Earthworm Jim, but from a top-down view as you're falling toward or away from the screen. It also kind of reminds me of the special stages in Earthworm Jim where you're riding your little pocket rocket and you're going through space. It doesn't, gameplay wise isn't the same, but it just has that feel. And being 2D as well obviously helps with that. And going back to the soundtrack, Tommy Tallarico does a great job with this. It's got a good mix of like this cool alien world sound. There's some rockin' tunes in there too. And then just like in Earthworm Jim, there's some songs that like are almost like they don't fit. They're kind of juxtaposed to the game and the themes and everything in the game, but it still fits somehow. And I don't think there's any like classical songs or old favorites, just like in Earthworm Jim, where, you know, it'll be like an actual Beethoven or Mozart piece or whatever like that. But it's got its own unique flair, and his soundtrack work really shines on this game. So just overall, the package was really, really cool. And I never got another Earthworm Jim after Earthworm Jim 3D, and so I guess because this feels similar to it to me, I will always hold this close to me. And just like Earthworm Jim, one thing I remember about this game is that the manual has comedy all throughout it. There's the disc art. It's like a yellow and silver disc, but I love it. You read through this and like there's inside jokes and wordplay and puns, and it's just, I loved Earthworm Jim's manuals, and this one is great as well. And an interesting thing, after I opened this, I remember this game right here, Messiah, was one of the most hyped games by the creator of Earthworm Jim. What was his name? David something. I don't think it tells on here. Dave Perry, I think, was his name. He was a very innovative developer, but he kind of, I don't know what he's up to today, but I'm sure you can find out. You just Google it. But yeah, that game, Messiah, did eventually come out on PC, I believe, but it was nowhere near the hype level. I mean, they had this like, oh, it'll pump 1 million polygons at once, so the characters look amazing, and I don't know, maybe it had some cool graphical tricks, but the game has long been forgotten, so it obviously didn't live up. But this game has been forgotten as well, but I I think you should definitely check it out. If you like 2D side-scrolling games, if you like Earthworm Jim games, definitely check this out. And I don't think it's really expensive either. I usually see it in along with budget titles and stuff. So pick this up if you are into those types of games. I guarantee you'll like it. Okay, so this next game doesn't count towards the total of the complete PS1 set, but it was a cool addition to have. My buddy actually had a copy of this, and he gave it to me for a few bucks. It's an import title, so I figured, hey, cool, I'll take this, even though it's not going towards the American set that I'm getting. And I don't have the North American version of this game. The North American title is Legend of Lagaya, and it's an RPG. The Japanese version, though, is just called The Lagaya. But really cool art, and nice little back art there. And it does have the manual, and the disc art is pretty cool, too. So really cool to have that. Like I said, I'm going for the complete North American set. But it is pretty cool to get something like this from time to time, and I really like the import cases. This import that I have up here, a Dragon Ball game, is in just a regular jewel case with not even the PlayStation style side. It's just a dark gray side, and I'm assuming it says PlayStation, the best for family. That's probably because it's I'm assuming a greatest hits version or something like that, so that it doesn't have as much style to it as these original cases. And I really like them. They say PlayStation on the side. They are jewel cases, but I think this thicker plastic on the sides and along the spine make it a little sturdier feeling, and I kind of wish that North America had these cases, or there was a way to just redo all the cases in this style. Plus it's cool because the art inside the case is, it's still removable, but it's nice and snug in there. I guess the only thing is if this breaks, it's not as easily replaceable like the North American one. So, not perfect thing, but still pretty cool addition to have to the PlayStation collection. And then the last two games I wanted to talk about this week are ones I got from a store. They were pretty cheap games anyway, but they were ones I've been kind of looking for. One of them I've been looking for, one of them was just kind of one that I didn't have and thought I'd pick up. But they had a 20% off sale at this store. It was a Micro Game, which is in Syracuse. I've been to that many times. I've been to it in a couple episodes of Sprite Lovers, but I don't know if we've ever done a walkthrough of it or whatever. But I'll first show off the one that I wasn't thrilled to get, but it was really, really cheap, so I figured I'd pick it up now. And there is a second one of this too, and it is Street Skater by Electronic Arts. What's funny about this is I believe this came out before Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and it's probably just an average game, and then Tony Hawk was the revolutionary skateboarding title at the time, and they made a second one I think after Tony Hawk had already taken off, and it's good luck catching up with Tony Hawk. But Electronic Arts did find success in the skate games, which I actually really liked on the Xbox 360, PS3 generation. So they came back around with a decent skating title that separated itself from Tony Hawk. But this was an interesting one, just knowing that the history and everything. And but it has cool artwork, actually. I do kind of like the style of it. And it's got some music advertised on the back, so probably from the licensed soundtrack. Yeah, I've heard of most of these bands. So, yeah, pretty cool to have that one. Like I said, I think it was $2 and then 20% off, so easy game to add to the collection. And then this one I actually have been looking forward to for quite a while. And it was always, overpriced. When I was in Albany a few weeks back, they had it at a store, but it was $13 or something, and I'm just I don't want to pay $13 for that. And I think this game got middling reviews back in the day, but I've always wanted to play it because similar to the Extreme games that I mentioned a while back, there's 1 Extreme, 2 Extreme, or 2 Extreme and 3 Extreme. It was the series back then. I mentioned a couple episodes ago how it reminds me of Road Rash in a way, and the way it the way it feels, the fact that the characters are sprite based and stuff. But this title is a little different, but has some of that feel because of the combat and everything. And it is Courier Crisis, and you are a bike courier going around doing just deliveries and stuff, I'd assume, in the city, but it has a very Road Rash kind of feel. You can punch people on the street. There's pedestrians to hit and stuff. So, and I think you can do tricks and stuff too. So, seems like a really fun game. I've always wanted to play it, and it was really cheap at Micro Game, and with the discount, that they were doing that day, I actually got it for a decent value overall. So, really cool to have a game I've been looking forward to, and the disc art's pretty funny. It's got the guy biffed on the ground, and his bike is so smashed into the ground the concrete is cracked, which I think is hilarious. But so pretty cool game to have. I was really happy to get that. So, and as you can see, not anything mind-blowing this episode, but you can't go for a complete set without getting the stuff like this as well. So I'm just as thrilled getting stuff like this as I am getting the high-end stuff. And as you've seen so far, I've definitely gotten some good stuff over the past few episodes, so I'm not complaining at all. I got great momentum. So the games so far, I believe last episode was at 296. So now we are at, and I did count this earlier, but I forgot because I've been blabbing. So, the failure I am at forgetting what the count was before I hit record. The actual count I'm up to now is 308 PlayStation games. So, I am over the 300 mark now. Pretty cool. Still got a ways to go, but that's a really good start. I'm really excited to continue this. So, thanks for watching this episode. Stay tuned for the next one. I'm looking forward to showing you off some other games that I know I've gotten since this episode was filmed. But we got some cool stuff on the horizon, and I really like everybody watching this and rooting me on. It just gives me more and more motivation to put out good episodes and keep going for that complete set. So thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next episode.